Okay, this chapter deals with essentially the Industrial Revolution, and you can see the dates there from 1760 until 1850. This is sometimes really called the first Industrial Revolution, and this chapter talks a little bit about really the development of the Industrial Revolution. So you'll see a lot of talk about what the Industrial Revolution is and how it affects really some various classes of people as well. The the Industrial Revolution begins really in England, and the textbook tries to discuss why this happened. And there are lots of reasons. Britain is unique. It has tremendous raw materials that are going to fuel the first industrial revolution. Coal, a centralized government, financial systems, culture, craftsmen, a strong government, infrastructure like canals, a large labor force as a result of really enclosure and the agricultural revolution, the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment. All of these are reasons why the Industrial Revolution begins in England. And that's an important thing to remember, is that the Industrial Revolution begins in England, and then it will spread. Some examples of where you can get some of these raw materials are shown on the map here. All right, coal, raw materials like iron ore are going to be major components of the Industrial Revolution. The textbook then talks a little bit about innovation and how the Industrial Revolution begins to catch on in certain industries. The best example is the textile industry, the making of cloth. And so the textbook takes you through how that was done before the putting out system, and then some of the advancements. Technology plays a major role. Innovation plays a major role in the development of the Industrial Revolution. So you'll read about Hargreaves' spinning jenny, which makes really spinning thread from raw material like wool or then later cloth faster. Arkwrights will invent a water frame that will spin the cloth even faster, but it needs water power to do it. Some of these machines are getting bigger; they need more power. Samuel Crompton will combine those two. So you start to see the development really of mass production. Now, conditions are terrible, and conditions are terrible for anybody that worked in these early textile factories. They were terrible for most people wouldn't work there because of the conditions, so children were used there. In England, poor people could be sent to prison. If you were in debt, you could be sent to prison. If you weren't paying your bills, you could be sent to prison. Orphan children, children that were orphans or that had lost their or had run away or lost their parents would be essentially taken from these poor houses, put into the factories, and work there. And essentially, it's slave labor in a lot of ways. You'll see Frederick Ingalls and others write about what they called the white slaves of England, and including when he writes about the condition of the working class in England. Power has become a limiting factor. The uh, the need for power is going to drive the next real innovations. Okay, so there's the spinning jenny, for example. There's spinning or spun thread that will then be woven into cloth. There's Crompton, inventor of the spinning mule, that combined essentially the spinning jenny and the water frame and the weaving process. All right, so there you go. The, uh, really the transformation comes with the development of the steam engine. The Greeks had experimented with steam engines to try to bring water out of mines. When you dig below the earth, mine, you get below the water table and mines will flood. So you need to be pumping that water out constantly. The need was to create a machine that could do this, and that's the beginning really of the steam engine. Uh, Energy sources, wood has always been used, charcoal has always been used, but the need was, and England has an abundance of coal. And so you start to see coal become the fuel for the steam engine. And eventually you will get to really the modern steam engine invented by James Watt, and that will be applied to the not only to the mines to get more coal out, but also into the factories. Factories are nothing but buildings with machines inside. Raw material comes in one side and finished goods come out the other. And you need those in places like in cities where the people are, or where you can take advantage of transportation and railroads and things like that. And so, if you have a power source allowing you to move your factory into more urban areas, then that takes you away from the countryside. It takes you away from running water. It takes you away from having to rely on wind power. And so, developing a efficient steam engine was one of the keys to the move to the cities and the expansion of the Industrial Revolution. It will also lead to steam powered transportation as well, and where you have the development of, for example, the railroads, okay, which in some ways is part of the snowball effect. When things start getting going in the Industrial Revolution, it seems to generate its own momentum. If you have a modern steam engine that can propel things, then you can move things from place to place. You need rails to do that, and the development of the modern railroad ensues. But you also need iron for the rails. You need metal for the steam engines, and that forces the iron industry to try to keep up. So each of these starts to feed on one another. You need more coal. You need to get better at coal mining. You need more iron. You need to get better at iron production. And so it really starts into a essentially a snowball effect. The uh, the next thing that the textbook kind of spends some time with is talking about the really the spread of the Industrial Revolution into other places. All right, and we will as you kind of get over here and talk about the Crystal Palace and things like that. You start to, and you'll read about that as well. You start to see the spread of the Industrial Revolution to other parts of the world, including the United States, including parts of Europe. The the thing is that Germany and the United States do very well. Eastern and Southern Europe's a little bit behind. Japan will try to catch up as well. So you do see the Industrial Revolution beginning to spread. Okay, but the British will remain superior, and they're in some ways almost isolated in ways as they begin to push forward industrially. The You can take a look at how the Industrial Revolution spreads into other parts of in other parts of Europe. And Germany does very well, but other parts of southern, really southern and eastern Europe, are lag behind a little bit. The One of the things is the British want to protect this. You'll read about how the British try to limit people from sending out their innovations, from spreading industrialization out into other parts of the world, and because they want to keep it really on their terms. Okay, the sort of the next sort of thing that they talk about is they talk a little bit about how other parts of the globe are really too busy to try to industrialize, and you read a little bit about Egypt and Latin America and India. But the next thing, of course, is the essentially the conditions of the workers, and it is not good. This is one of the saddest parts of the chapter, and it's one of the things that I have you working on in your discussions. But really, this is one of the saddest parts of the Industrial Revolution. The how it really impacts families, women, children, so much to the point that you start seeing even England start to limit what women and children can do. The uh, the conditions in the mines, the conditions in the textile factories are terrible, and there are lots of injuries, lots of problems, lots of abuse as well. So You'll read about, of course, problems for women. Once women become pregnant, they have more difficulty keeping up with the pace of work. If you have a child, it's very difficult to work and to feed a child as well. So this leads to real problems for women as well, which you'll read about in the chapter. And eventually, of course, for example, England will again step in 1842 and really prohibit women from working below ground in the mines because of the heat. Oftentimes, men and women would feel the need to, because it's wet, because it is hot, to work naked, and the problem of having women and men in close proximity naked, of course, you can get the ramifications of that. The uh, the other thing that the the textbook focuses on is how industrialization changes cities. Working conditions, factories in the cities are terrible. Cities are overcrowded. They're crime infested. They leads to all sorts of social problems. The disruption of community. So you'll read about that as well. Some of the responses to industrialization, including new classes that emerge. You'll see, for example, the beginnings really of the entrepreneurial class, of the factory owning class. They don't get their wealth from land; they get their wealth from capitalism. You'll see the development of factory owners, and then you'll see some of the people that are angry about the transition to industrialization. The most important one to kind of take note of in your reading is Friedrich Engels and Karl Marx, which later we will talk about as the pioneers of communism. Socialism is on its way as well. So you'll read about some of these and the conditions of the workers. So as you read this, make sure that you understand that this is a process. It starts really as innovation, and it ends up, of course, having some major social consequences. The Industrial Revolution is not just about inventions, it's not just about industry, it's about the people that are caught up in the Industrial Revolution as well. So, as you read about this, make sure that you see the connection between the developments going on in industry and then what's going to happen socially later on.